The stars had been quiet for a very long time. The Galactic Confederation controlled most of the known galaxy, and peace was normal. War was something that happened thousands of years ago, back when species were young and stupid. Now everyone worked together, each race doing what they did best. The crystal people called were the best at math and building things. Their cities looked like giant diamonds floating in space. They could solve any problem if you gave them enough time and the right numbers. The gas cloud people called never fought anyone. They talked instead. They could convince anyone to agree with anything, floating around in their special suits that kept their gas bodies together. Wars ended when they showed up to talk. The bug people called worked like one giant mind. Millions of them would work together without any confusion. They moved supplies across the galaxy like clockwork. Nothing was ever late when they handled it. Then the humans showed up. Captain Sarah felt her heart beating fast as her ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel. In front of her was the first alien space station humans had ever seen. It was huge, spinning slowly, covered in lights that made patterns she didn't understand. "This is it," she said to her crew. "First contact, try not to mess this up." The aliens had been watching Earth for months. They knew humans could travel between stars now, so they sent an invitation. A simple message that somehow everyone on Earth could understand. "Welcome to the galaxy. Come meet your neighbors." The space station was like a small city. Sarah and her team walked through halls filled with creatures they had only imagined in movies. Some looked like walking crystals. Others were clouds of gas floating in glass suits. Some looked like giant ants walking on two legs. They were taken to a large room where important-looking aliens sat behind a curved desk. In the middle was a who sparkled like a diamond. His name was something humans couldn't say, so they called him Crystal. "Welcome, humans," Crystal said, his voice sounding like music played on glass. "We have studied your species. You are very interesting." Sarah tried to look confident. "We're happy to meet you. Earth is ready to join the galaxy." Crystal made a sound like chimes. Sarah realized he was laughing. "Join? Oh no, young species, you must learn first, grow, become civilized." "Civilized?" Sarah asked. "We have cities, laws, governments." A floated forward. Her gas body swirled inside her suit like purple smoke. "You still fight each other," she said in a voice like wind through trees. "You destroy your own planet. You hunt animals for food instead of growing it properly." "That's changing," Sarah said, but she felt small. Crystal touched something that looked like a glass tablet. "We have categories for new species. You are Category 3, developing but dangerous. You need thousands of years to become useful." The representative clicked its mandibles together. When it spoke, it sounded like a computer. "Humans show violence patterns, war frequency high, resource waste extreme, emotional control poor, classification primitive but possibly trainable." Sarah felt anger building inside her, but she kept quiet. These aliens were offering help, even if they were rude about it. "What happens now?" she asked. "We give you a small trading post," Crystal said. "Some basic technology, nothing dangerous. You can trade simple things, art, food, entertainment. Come back in 500 years when you've grown up." The meeting ended quickly. Sarah and her team were given a tour of the station's shopping areas. They saw amazing technology everywhere. Ships that could cross the galaxy in days. Computers that could think better than humans. Weapons that could crack planets. "Why can't we have these things?" asked Tom, Sarah's engineer. Their guide, a smaller crystal person, seemed almost sorry for them. "Because you would hurt yourselves and others. Your species is too young, too emotional." "Emotional." "You make decisions with feelings, not logic. You take risks that make no sense. You never accept when something is impossible." Tom laughed. "And that's bad." "Very bad," the guide said seriously. "Impossible means impossible. Fighting it only causes suffering." Back on Earth, Sarah gave her report to the World Council. The news spread quickly across the planet. Humanity had met the galaxy, and the galaxy thought they were children. Some people were angry, others were scared. Many wanted to prove the aliens wrong right away. President spoke to the world. They say we need to grow up. Maybe they're right, but we'll do it our way on our time. Meanwhile, on the Confederation's main world, Commander Ara finished his report about the humans. He was a senior officer, responsible for watching new species. Humans are typical for young species, he wrote. They show creativity but lack mathematical precision. Their emotional nature makes them unpredictable. They refuse to accept natural limitations, which will cause them trouble. He paused, remembering something strange from the human ship's records. These creatures had somehow built faster-than-light travel using completely wrong mathematics. Their engine design should have exploded, but it worked perfectly. He shook his crystalline head. Young species often got lucky. Recommendation: standard development protocols, limited technology transfer, monitor for progress every 50 years. Expected time to useful civilization, 2,000 to 5,000 years. He sent the report and forgot about humans. The galaxy was huge, and there were more important things to worry about. On Earth, humanity started working with their new alien trading post. They sold art, music, and food to curious aliens who thought human culture was charmingly primitive. In return, they got basic alien technology and materials. But humans did what humans always did. They took things apart to see how they worked. They asked questions that made alien teachers uncomfortable. They tried to improve everything, even when they were told it was already perfect. The aliens thought this was cute, like watching children play with toys. They had no idea what was coming. 6 months after first contact, the galaxy was about to face something it hadn't seen in 10,000 years, something that would make them desperately need every help they could get, even from the emotional, primitive, impossible humans. The warning came from the edge of the galaxy at 3 in the morning, Confederation Standard Time. Long-range sensors detected something that shouldn't exist anymore. Commander Ara was pulled from his meditation chamber by alarms that hadn't sounded in 10,000 years. The emergency frequency was reserved for only one thing: the return of the Devourers. "This cannot be correct," he said to his aide, looking at the sensor readings. But the numbers were clear. Something massive was moving toward the galaxy, eating everything in its path. The Devourers were ancient machines that came from somewhere beyond the galaxy. No one knew who built them or why. They appeared every 10,000 years, consumed entire star systems, and disappeared again. Last time, they had eaten 12 worlds before vanishing back into dark space. The Confederation had always known they would return. They had 10,000 years to prepare. Now that time was over. Within hours, every major species in the galaxy was working on the problem. The greatest minds that had ever lived focused on one question: how do you stop machines that can eat planets? They ran calculations on their quantum computers. The numbers were terrible. The Devourers had ships the size of moons, protected by energy shields that could stop any known weapon. Their bodies were made of self-repairing metal that got stronger every time it was damaged. "We would need 847 years to build enough firepower," announced Chief Mathematician Ra at the Emergency Council meeting, "even if we used the resources of every world in the galaxy." They tried something different. They sent their best diplomats to make contact with the Devourers. Maybe they could talk, negotiate, find a peaceful solution. The diplomatic ship lasted exactly 4 minutes. The Devourers didn't communicate. They didn't negotiate. They simply ate the ship and added its materials to their growing fleet. They worked on evacuation plans. With their perfect organization, maybe they could move entire populations away from the Devourers' path. Their hive mind calculated for days, running millions of scenarios. The result was hopeless. "We cannot move populations fast enough," reported Hive Mind Primary. "The devourers advance too quickly. We can save perhaps 10% of the threatened worlds." For the first time in thousands of years, the Galactic Confederation faced a problem they couldn't solve. That's when someone remembered the humans. "They are primitive," said Crystal at the Emergency Council meeting, "but perhaps they might contribute something." "What could they possibly offer?" asked the representative. "They have been part of the galaxy for less than 1 year." "Raw materials," suggested the delegate. "Basic labor. Perhaps they could serve as a distraction while we work on real solutions." It was a desperate idea, but the council was out of options. They sent all their data about the devourers to every member species, including Earth. Maybe someone somewhere would see something they had missed. On Earth, the data arrived at the International Space Defense Center. Dr. Sarah, the lead physicist, was working late when the files came through. She expected another routine technology transfer, maybe new engine designs or communication systems. Instead, she found detailed scans of planet-eating machines and a galaxy-wide plea for help. Sarah didn't sleep for 3 days. She ran the numbers again and again, looking for something the alien experts had missed. The math was clear: the devourers were unstoppable. Their technology was too advanced, their defenses too strong, their numbers too large. But something bothered her about the reports. The aliens kept describing the devourers as impossible to defeat and beyond conventional solutions. To Sarah's human mind, that sounded like a challenge, not a fact. She started thinking about the problem differently. Instead of asking, "How do we build bigger guns?" she asked, "What if guns aren't the answer?" The breakthrough came when she was eating a sandwich at her desk. She was reading about how the devourer's metal got stronger when attacked, and she dropped mustard on the report. As she wiped it off, she accidentally smeared some of the text. The words became unclear, fuzzy, uncertain, and Sarah had an idea that made her laugh out loud. "What if," she said to her empty office, "we don't attack them? What if we make them attack themselves?" She pulled up her quantum physics textbooks and started writing equations. What she was thinking was completely insane. It violated every rule of physics she had learned. But the math actually worked. The idea was simple in a completely impossible way. Every piece of matter in the universe existed because the universe was certain it existed. Quantum physics said that particles only had definite properties when they were observed. So what if you could make the universe uncertain about whether the devourers existed? It would require technology that didn't exist, using materials that were only theoretical, powered by energy sources that were purely imaginary. The weapons would have to convince reality itself that the enemy ships were just a bad idea. Sarah called them probability bombs, weapons that didn't destroy targets, they made targets forget how to exist. She worked for 72 hours straight, running simulations, checking mathematics, building theoretical models. When she was done, she had a complete weapons system that could theoretically stop the devourers. The engineering requirements were insane. The weapons needed exotic matter that existed only in black holes. They required quantum processors that would need to be built inside space-time distortions. The energy requirements were larger than entire solar systems. But it could work, maybe. Sarah sent her proposal to the Galactic Council with a simple note. "I think I found a solution. It's completely impossible, but the math checks out." The response came back within hours. Commander Ara himself replied, "Thank you for your creative contribution. We appreciate human enthusiasm. However, this proposal requires technology that does not exist and materials that cannot be obtained. We have filed it under interesting but impractical ideas." The scientists were more direct. "This human has confused science fiction with science fact. Probability bombs are impossible. The energy requirements alone would destroy any civilization that tried to build them. They were polite but firm. We appreciate the human effort to help. Perhaps they could focus on more practical contributions, like providing moral support or cultural entertainment. Only the bothered to run detailed calculations. Human proposal analyzed. Probability of success, 0.0001%. Probability of catastrophic failure, 99.9999%. Recommendation: ignore completely. Sarah read the responses and smiled. In her experience, when everyone said something was impossible, that usually meant it was just really hard. She started making phone calls. Within days, every human scientist, engineer, and crazy inventor on Earth was working on the same problem. Universities shared research freely. Corporations gave away trade secrets. Governments opened their classified files. The aliens watched with growing confusion as humans began doing things that made no sense. They were building machines that shouldn't work, using materials that didn't exist, powered by principles that violated known physics. Most disturbing to the Galactic Council was the way humans talked about the project. They didn't say, "if we can build these weapons." They said, "when we build these weapons." As if impossible was just another word for difficult. The Devourers were still coming. They had consumed 3 more systems and were accelerating toward inhabited space. The galaxy had maybe 2 months before the first major worlds would be attacked. The Confederation continued their methodical approach, building conventional defenses and planning strategic retreats. It was logical, careful, and completely hopeless. Meanwhile, humans did what humans do best. They looked at an impossible problem and said, "Hold my coffee, I've got an idea." 3 weeks after the galaxy dismissed her proposal, Dr. Sarah sent a video message to the Galactic Council. She was standing in what looked like a factory, but the machines behind her were making things that shouldn't exist. "Hi there," she said, looking tired but excited. "Just wanted to update you on our impossible project." She turned the camera to show a device that made scientists drop their crystalline jaws. It was a working quantum uncertainty generator, built from spare parts and powered by what appeared to be a modified coffee machine. "Turns out impossible just means no one's tried it the right way yet," Sarah continued. "We should have our first prototype probability bomb ready for testing next week." Commander Aura watched the message 3 times before calling an emergency meeting. "How?" he asked his science advisors. "Our calculations show this cannot work." Chief Scientist Ra studied the video carefully. Their design violates 17 fundamental laws of physics. The quantum cascade should have destroyed their entire planet. Instead, it appears to be functioning at 340% of theoretical maximum efficiency. "That's impossible," Ara said. "Yes, sir, that seems to be the human specialty." Across the galaxy, humans were doing impossible things every day. Dr. Maria Santos took her team into a spacetime rift near Jupiter to harvest exotic matter. The Confederation had calculated the survival chances at 0.003%. Everyone else called it suicide. Maria called it Tuesday. "The trick," she explained to her terrified crew as their ship dove into twisting spacetime, "is not to think about the math. Math says we should be dead, but we're not dead, so obviously the math is wrong somewhere." They came back with cargo holds full of material that existed only in theory textbooks. When asked how they survived the trip, Maria shrugged. "We told the universe we were too busy to die today. Apparently it agreed." In London, 12-year-old was supposed to be doing homework. Instead, he was playing with quantum entanglement using his gaming computer and some magnets he'd taken apart from speakers. His science teacher found him 3 hours later, successfully quantum linking 2 basketballs across his bedroom. The basketballs were spinning in perfect synchronization, even though they were on opposite sides of the room. "How did you do this?" his teacher asked. "I dunno," said. "I just kept trying different things until it worked. My computer said it was impossible, but computers are stupid sometimes." News of accident reached Doctor within hours. Soon, human engineers were scaling up his impossible process to quantum-link spacecraft across solar systems. The hive mind analyzed the technique for days before admitting they couldn't understand how it worked. "The human child appears to have solved quantum entanglement scalability using trial and error," reported to the council. "This approach violates all known principles of scientific method. It should not produce results, yet it does." The most disturbing reports came from human industrial centers. Humans were working with an intensity that frightened other species. They worked 20-hour shifts, slept in their laboratories, and consumed dangerous amounts of caffeine and sugar. When observers suggested the humans slow down to avoid exhaustion, the humans just laughed. "Sleep is for when the galaxy isn't about to be eaten," said Doctor. "We'll rest when we're dead." "But you might die from exhaustion," pointed out the observer. "Then we'll work faster," replied, as if this made perfect sense. The human manufacturing process was chaos to alien eyes. They used parts from destroyed ships to build quantum processors. They stored exotic matter in food containers because the cafeteria had the right kind of magnetic sealing. They transported critical components on garbage haulers because they were the only ships available. Yet somehow it all worked. Human logistics made no mathematical sense, but materials arrived exactly where they were needed, exactly when they were needed. They studied human supply chains for weeks before giving up. "Their system is mathematically impossible," they reported. "They transport critical parts using the wrong ships to the wrong locations at the wrong times. Yet inventory tracking shows 0 errors. We cannot explain this." Captain, now leading the human space fleet, tried to explain it to confused alien observers. "Look, we don't have time for proper logistics. We just move stuff where it needs to go and figure out the details later." "But how do you ensure accuracy?" asked the diplomat. "We don't," said. "We just trust that things will work out. Usually they do." This gas body swirled in distress. "That's not how logistics work." "It's how human logistics work," replied. "Different species, different methods." As the weeks passed, the impossible became routine. Humans built quantum computers using video game processors. They created artificial gravity with modified washing machines. They powered their factories with energy sources that technically didn't exist. Most aliens stopped trying to understand human engineering. They just watched in growing amazement as humans built weapons that could unmake reality itself. The breakthrough that shocked everyone came from an unexpected source. Dr. James Wright, a retired automotive engineer from Detroit, was helping build exotic matter containment systems when he had an idea. "You know what's wrong with this whole setup," he said to Doctor during a coffee break. "We're thinking too complicated. These devourer things eat planets, right? What if we just make them really, really confused about what they're supposed to be eating?" Stared at him. "What do you mean?" "Well, my car breaks down all the time because some part gets confused about what it's supposed to do. Usually I just hit it with a wrench until it remembers. Can't we do the same thing to these space monsters?" It was the most ridiculous idea had ever heard. It was also brilliant. Within days, humans were working on confusion bombs, weapons that didn't just question the devourer's existence, but made them question their own purpose. If the machines forgot what they were supposed to be doing, maybe they'd just stop. The concept was so simple that it was almost stupid. It was also completely impossible to build using conventional technology. So humans built it using unconventional technology. They used quantum processors that ran on pure stubbornness, powered by energy sources that existed only because humans insisted they should. Commander Ara received daily reports that made no sense to him. Humans have successfully created a quantum field that makes matter forget what it's supposed to be, read one report. The engineering team accomplished this by trying really hard and not taking no for an answer. Another report stated, human child has accidentally improved exotic matter production by 400% by feeding it pizza. When asked to explain the process, child stated, I dunno, maybe it was hungry. The most disturbing report came from a science team that had been observing human work methods. We can no longer predict human behavior using standard mathematical models. They appear to operate on principles we do not understand, possibly involving what they call winging it and seeing what happens. As the Devourers drew closer to inhabited space, the galaxy's most advanced civilizations continued their methodical preparations. They built evacuation ships and reinforced their defenses, following careful plans developed over thousands of years. Meanwhile, humans built impossible weapons in impossible ways, powered by impossible energy sources, operated by people who refused to believe anything was truly impossible. The Confederation watched nervously as humanity prepared to test their reality-altering weapons against the most dangerous force the galaxy had ever known. Most aliens expected spectacular failure. Some were starting to hope they were wrong. The test was scheduled for Tuesday morning at exactly 10:30 a.m., Earth Standard Time. The target was a small, lifeless moon in the system that nobody would miss. Every major species in the galaxy sent observers to watch what they expected would be humanity's spectacular failure. Dr. Sarah stood in the control room of humanity's first probability weapon, surrounded by machines that hummed with impossible energy. The weapon itself looked like someone had crossed a telescope with a washing machine and powered it with lightning. Final systems check, she announced to her team. Quantum uncertainty generator is stable at 340% of theoretical maximum, reported Dr. Santos. Exotic matter containment is holding, even though it really shouldn't, added Dr. Wright. Reality distortion field is, well, it's distorting reality exactly like we wanted, said, who was now the galaxy's youngest quantum engineer at age 12. Commander Ara watched from the observation deck of a Confederation ship, positioned at what they calculated was a safe distance. He had filed 17 different reports explaining why this test would fail catastrophically. The mathematics were clear. Humans were about to accidentally destroy their own solar system. Target locked, announced Captain from the weapons platform. All alien observers are clear of the danger zone, confirmed the coordinator. Beginning probability cascade in 3, 2, 1, fire. The weapon didn't make a sound. There was no explosion, no flash of light, no dramatic display of power. One moment the target moon was there. The next moment it wasn't. Not destroyed, not vaporized, just gone, as if it had never existed in the first place. The silence on the observation deck lasted for exactly 37 seconds before every alien present started talking at once. Where did it go? Demanded a scientist. According to our sensors, it was never there, replied the ship's computer. But we saw it, we have recordings. Yes, sir, you have recordings of something that our instruments now say never existed. Commander Ara's crystalline structure actually flickered, which was the equivalent of fainting. Run the test again, he said weakly. The second test target was a captured Devourer scout ship, a small machine about the size of a city bus, but made of the same indestructible metal as the main fleet. It had been drifting dead in space for months, resistant to every weapon the Confederation had tried. Target acquired, announced. This should be interesting, said Doctor. Let's see if confusion bombs work on actual Devourers. She pressed the button. The scout ship began to shake. Then it started to come apart, piece by piece. not exploding, just disassembling itself, as if each component had suddenly remembered it was supposed to be somewhere else. Within minutes, there was nothing left but a cloud of atoms, each one apparently confused about why it had ever been part of a devourer. The alien observer sat in stunned silence. "How?" asked the representative, her gas body swirling frantically inside her suit. "We convinced it that being a scary space monster was just a bad life choice," explained Dr. Wright cheerfully. "Turns out even machines have existential crises if you push the right buttons." But the celebration was short-lived. Reports came in that the main Devourer fleet had accelerated. They would reach the first inhabited systems in 6 weeks instead of 2 months. The test had somehow alerted them that someone was fighting back. "We need more weapons," announced the Galactic Council. "How many can humans build?" Doctor's answer terrified them. "How many do you need?" "Our calculations show we need at least 500 probability bombs to stop the main fleet," reported Commander Ara. "Each weapon requires the industrial output of an entire star system," added the chief engineer. "The energy requirements alone would take decades to accumulate, and the casualties from radiation exposure during construction would be," he paused, calculating, "approximately 12 million deaths minimum." "When do you need them?" asked Doctor. 6 weeks, Ara replied, "but it's mathematically impossible to." "We'll take the job," interrupted. The next day, every human colony ship in space became a mobile weapons factory. Asteroid mining operations retooled their equipment to harvest exotic matter. Even Earth's children organized themselves into production teams, building the smaller components during recess and lunch breaks. The alien observers couldn't believe what they were seeing. Humans were working with a desperate intensity that frightened other species. They worked until they collapsed from exhaustion, then got up and worked more. Many were dying from radiation exposure, but others just took their places. "This is madness," said a diplomat, "watching humans load exotic matter with their bare hands despite the lethal radiation. They're killing themselves." "Yeah," agreed Captain, who was personally overseeing the most dangerous operations. "But if we don't, everyone dies anyway, so we'll take our chances." "But the casualty rate is acceptable," said firmly. "We're humans. We don't give up just because something's dangerous." They tried to understand human manufacturing processes and gave up after 3 days. "Their logistics make no mathematical sense," they reported. "They're building quantum weapons using spare parts from food processors. They're transporting exotic matter in coffee cups. Their quality control consists of someone hitting things with a hammer until they work properly." Yet somehow, weapons were being completed ahead of schedule. Young had revolutionized exotic matter production by accidentally discovering that it worked better when you played music to it. "I think the atoms like jazz," he explained to confused scientists. "Classical music makes them sluggish, but jazz gets them excited." Dr. Santos led teams into increasingly dangerous space-time rifts, bringing back materials that shouldn't exist. When asked about safety protocols, she laughed. "Safety is for people who have time to be scared. We don't." Most disturbing to the aliens was how humans handled the impossible engineering requirements. When their quantum processors overheated, they cooled them with ice cream. When their containment fields failed, they fixed them with duct tape and prayers. When their reality distortion generators stopped working, they kicked them until they started again. Their engineering methods violate every known principle of safety and physics, reported a terrified observer. Yet their equipment functions at 150% of design specifications. "How is this possible?" asked Commander Ara. "We believe humans operate on a fundamental principle unknown to galactic science. If it's stupid and it works, it's not stupid." As the weeks passed, the impossible became routine. Humans built weapons that could unmake reality using materials that shouldn't exist, powered by energy sources that violated physics, operated by people who thought impossible, was just another word for challenging. The breakthrough came when little age 8 asked her mother why the weapons had to be so big and complicated. "Well, honey," her mother explained, "they need lots of power to convince the universe that bad guys shouldn't exist." "But can't you just ask nicely?" asked. It was such a simple question that it revolutionized everything. What if the weapons didn't need to force reality to change? What if they just asked politely? Doctor worked for 3 straight days redesigning the probability bombs based on an 8-year-old's question. The new weapons were smaller, more efficient, and somehow even more impossible than the originals. "How do these work?" asked a scientist studying the new designs. "They say please," explained Dr. Wright. "Turns out the universe is pretty reasonable if you just ask nicely instead of trying to force things." With 2 days left before the Devourers arrived, humanity announced they had completed 847 probability weapons, nearly twice what the Confederation had said was necessary. "How?" asked Commander Ara, his voice filled with something that might have been awe. "We had some help," said Doctor. "Turns out when you're fighting for the survival of the galaxy, everyone wants to pitch in. Even reality itself seems to be rooting for us." The weapons were loaded onto every available human ship. Volunteers lined up for missions that had 90% casualty rates. When asked why, they gave answers that confused alien observers. "Because someone has to do it," said one pilot. "Because it's Tuesday," said another. "Because we're humans," said a third. "This is what we do." As the Devourer fleet approached the first inhabited system, the galaxy held its breath. The most advanced civilizations in known space had spent 6 weeks watching a young, primitive species do impossible things with impossible technology operated by impossible people. Now they would all find out if impossible was enough to save the galaxy. The Devourers arrived exactly on schedule, their massive ships appearing at the edge of the system like a nightmare made of metal and hunger. Each ship was the size of a small moon, covered in weapons that could crack planets. There were hundreds of them. Commander Ara watched from the Confederation flagship as the alien fleet began its approach toward Prime, home to 6 billion civilians. The evacuation ships were still loading refugees. They needed more time. "Human fleet, report status," he transmitted. Captain's voice came back steady and calm. "We're ready, Commander. All 847 weapons are operational and aimed. Human crews are in position." "Captain, your casualty projections are..." Ara couldn't finish the sentence. "Are what they are," replied. "We knew the job was dangerous when we took it." The human ships looked ridiculous next to the Devourer fleet. Small, patched together from spare parts, powered by coffee machines and determination. They should have been running away. Instead, they were charging directly toward certain death. "All human ships, this is Captain," came the broadcast. "Remember, we're not just fighting for Earth today. We're fighting for everyone who said we couldn't do it. Let's show the galaxy what humans can achieve." The response from the human fleet was not military protocol. It was laughter. Dr. Sarah sat in the weapons control center of the lead ship, watching the Devourers grow larger on her screen. Beside her, Dr. Wright was humming a song and tapping buttons like he was playing a video game. "Exotic matter levels are stable," reported Dr. Santos over the comm. "Reality distortion field is ready to ask nicely," added. "All weapons report ready to make the universe a better place," announced, who had somehow become the fleet's communications officer despite being 8 years old. Smiled. "Leave it to humans to face the end of the galaxy, with jokes and children giving tactical reports." The Devourers opened fire first. Energy beams that could melt continents lashed out toward the human fleet. The aliens watching expected to see humanity wiped out in seconds. Instead, they watched human ships dance. Captain had trained his pilots using video games and caffeine. They moved in ways that violated physics, pulling maneuvers that should have torn their ships apart. When asked how they survived forces that should have killed them, one pilot's response became legendary. "We told our ships they were tougher than they looked. Apparently they believed us." The human fleet scattered like water, flowing around the Devourer weapons as if they knew exactly where each shot would be. Ships that should have been destroyed kept flying, held together by duct tape and stubborn refusal to accept defeat. "First wave fire probability bombs," ordered. 50 human ships fired their impossible weapons at the Devourer fleet. The results were immediate and spectacular. Devourer ships began to flicker in and out of existence, as if reality couldn't decide whether they should be there or not. "Direct hits on 12 enemy vessels," reported cheerfully. "They're having an existential crisis." "Good," said, "let's give them more to think about." But the Devourers adapted quickly. Their ships began generating fields that made them more certain of their own existence. The probability bombs that hit them afterward just made them angry. "They're learning," announced. "Time for Plan B." "What's Plan B?" asked Dr. Wright. "We improvise," replied. "We're humans, it's what we do best." What followed was the most chaotic battle in galactic history. Humans did things that made alien military experts give up trying to understand tactics. They used garbage haulers as weapons platforms. They turned mining equipment into reality-altering cannons. They fired confusion bombs powered by children's laughter. When Captain Martinez's ship lost its main weapons, he rammed it directly into a Devourer vessel while screaming, "This is for my grandmother's cookies." The impact somehow caused the enemy ship to forget what it was made of. When Lieutenant, no relation to Doctor, ran out of exotic matter ammunition, she started firing regular missiles that her crew had convinced they were actually probability bombs. The missiles believed it and started unmaking reality anyway. Most incredibly, when teenage pilot Jake's ship was completely destroyed, he managed to eject in an escape pod and continue fighting by throwing wrenches at Devourer ships. Somehow, this worked. The aliens watching couldn't believe what they were seeing. Human combat doctrine appears to be, "Try everything and see what happens," reported one observer. "They're using repair tools as weapons," said another. One human child just convinced a Devourer ship to surrender by asking it politely, added a third. But the humans were taking massive casualties. Ships were being destroyed faster than they could be replaced. For every Devourer vessel that forgot how to exist, 2 human ships were reduced to scrap metal. That's when 16-year-old, the older sister of 8-year-old, made the decision that saved the galaxy. Her ship was crippled, her crew was dead, and her weapons were destroyed. The Devourer command ship, a massive vessel that coordinated the entire fleet, was approaching prime. In minutes, it would begin consuming the planet. Looked at her one remaining probability bomb and had an idea that was completely insane, even by human standards. "This is to all ships," she broadcast. "I'm going to try something really stupid. If it works, tell everyone that humans don't give up, ever." She aimed her damaged ship directly at the command vessel and activated her probability bomb's manual trigger. But instead of firing it outward, she set it to detonate inside her own ship. The theory was simple. If she could make herself uncertain about existing while colliding with the command ship, maybe she could make it uncertain too. The practice was suicide. "Don't do this," his voice crackled over the radio. "Too late, Doc," replied. "Besides, someone has to show these galaxy-eating jerks what humans think about impossible odds." Her last transmission was heard across the entire battle. "Hey, Universe, this is what we call a human solution. Tell my mom I was awesome." Ship hit the Devourer command vessel at exactly 11:47 a.m., Earth Standard Time. The explosion that followed didn't just destroy both ships, it created a cascade of uncertainty that spread through the entire Devourer fleet. One by one, the massive ships began to question their own existence. They had spent millions of years consuming galaxies, but suddenly they couldn't remember why. They looked at the small, damaged human ship still fighting desperately and felt confused. What were they doing here? Why were they trying to eat a planet full of crystal people? And why did these tiny human ships make them feel something they had never experienced before? Doubt. The Devourer fleet didn't retreat. They didn't surrender. They simply forgot that they had ever wanted to consume anything. The ancient machines that had terrorized the galaxy for millions of years looked around at the destruction they had caused and decided they didn't like it very much. They left, not to return to dark space, but to find some other dimension where they could figure out what they really wanted to be. The battle was over. In the aftermath, Commander Ara filed his final report about humanity. His hands shook as he wrote, "We have fundamentally misunderstood the human species. They do not solve problems through superior technology or advanced mathematics. They solve problems by refusing to believe problems cannot be solved. They achieve the impossible through creativity, desperation, and complete disregard for the laws of physics." Today, a 16-year-old human girl saved the galaxy by flying into an enemy command ship while asking reality to forget that either of them existed. This worked. We recommend immediate reclassification of humanity from developing species to reality adjustment specialists. Their new role in the Confederation should be simple. When something is impossible, call the humans. The Galactic Council voted unanimously to accept the recommendation. Dr. Sarah, now director of the Human Department of Impossible Solutions, gave a speech to the entire galaxy 3 months later. "You discovered the hard way what humans can achieve. We discovered something too, that impossible is just another word for hasn't been done yet. The universe is a lot more flexible than you think, and it responds well to polite requests backed by overwhelming determination. Some species conquer through technology, others through diplomacy. Humans conquer by looking at the word impossible and saying, 'Hold my coffee, let's see about that.' The galaxy is safe now, not because we had the best weapons or the plans, but because when faced with certain death, humans did what humans do best. We got creative, we got stubborn, and we refused to quit. Also, we asked nicely. That part's important too." As finished her speech, 8-year-old, the communications officer, added her own note. "And remember, if anyone else tries to eat our galaxy, we'll just have to convince them that's not a very nice thing to do." The galaxy learned that day that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't their impossible technology or their reality-altering bombs. It was their absolute refusal to accept that anything was truly impossible, combined with their willingness to ask the universe politely if it wouldn't mind helping out. And as it turned out, the universe was quite happy to help. It just needed someone brave enough to ask.